Hello everyone, welcome to Spirit Coffee Talk this week. I'm so happy to have you here. We had some really big conversations, really important conversations, I think, this week about timelines, what's happening collectively, and the collective learnings. And we had a really beautiful analogy that kind of flows through and I think will really be beneficial in helping us to understand how we can navigate these really, really tough, kind of chaotic times. And then we also got into a really wonderful conversation about the balance of science and spirituality and how they're meant to be together. So I really hope you enjoy this conversation. Please share it with whoever it might serve. Grab your coffee, enjoy, and let us know if you have any questions or thoughts going forward. Hope you enjoy. Hello everyone and welcome to Spirit Coffee Talk. My name is Elyse. I am a medium and channel with Avalon Spirit, and I'm joined by the lovely Elyse Richmond and Ginette where we are going to talk all things spirit. So we had some stuff come up as we were chit-chatting beforehand, and we were like, you know what, we got to just hit play and jump into it. So here we are.
Yeah. All right. Welcome everyone. So I'm going to dominate right now with the idea of timelines, because all week this week, Spirit has been saying, talk about timelines, talk about timelines. People need to understand timelines, because the idea is to hopefully help you make sense of why some things in your life and the patterns seem to not make sense right now, why things seem to just flip out of thin air. And it has to do with timelines. So I want to try and give you guys a really general idea to understand why we're even talking about timelines in the first place. So we have unlimited amount of timelines in which there are different versions of how our life path can go. Okay, so we have, as we've talked about, when we come into this life path, we create a blueprint. And this blueprint is an idea of what the soul, our higher soul, would like us to experience. And so there's different significant juncture points, but there are many ways to reach those juncture points. And those many different ways are many different timelines that are available to us. Now, normally we would be moving through a single timeline, pretty strategically maneuvering things as we go. But what's happened in the last decade, especially the last 5-6 years, it's kicked up, and then it's amplified even more since 2020 and especially 2021. So I'm trying to really highlight how intense it's gotten. Is the amount of variability in timelines within even a day is like this. So before, what was just kind of like just adjust here and carry on. Now we're doing this in a day of potentiality. Different ways in which we can reach those juncture points based on the decisions we make in each thing, okay? So with that, what's happened, I'm just gonna draw a little graph here. So this is a graph of humanity moving forward. So on December 21st, 2020, so last year at the winter solstice, we actually hit, so this is what was kind of thought we would hit in terms of a trajectory of consciousness, okay? Meaning how fast people awaken was thought to be maybe about this angle. But then what happened actually was this. We actually moved in a way steeper trajectory of reaching higher consciousness, right? And so what that means is things happen faster and change faster. But what's happened since then is there's been a lot of fear narratives on the planet that have pulled people, some people, off of this back into some of these other smaller timelines, right? And so what's happening is for some people, they're actually moving through this kind of like this. So when those timelines are shifting back and forth, that can make for feeling into your plan, feeling into the direction of knowing where you're going, feeling like you're like, yeah, my life's in order and I'm aligned, can get thwarted because if the collective of humanity, meaning a greater proportion of humanity, all falls backwards in ascension, it pulls it from that higher timeline. Just as if more of humanity moves forward in ascension, it pulls it closer to that higher timeline. Because we have so much polarity happening and pulling back and forth, we're kind of being yo-yoed through these timeline potentials right now, which is what is really making it challenging for people to feel into the direction where they're going, sustain plans that are happening, and so on. So that's the general idea of timelines. And so, Lisa, you were saying you had a really great way to
Yeah,
explain
I'm
that.
like, it's hard because there's a part of me that's like, there's like, I just keep getting more and more and more about this, but it's like, it's almost like getting ahead of myself, I guess, or beyond maybe the scope of like understanding exactly, you know what I mean? Because this is not a black or white concept. And
Gray.
so it can be, it's all gray. So it can be
Yeah.
really difficult to understand because there is no like law, like law of frequency within this, right? And so it is a very hmm, abstract concept to really conceptualize from a third dimensional perspective in a human form because we see life as a very linear thing. We're born on this day and we die on this day. That's our guarantee. And through it is our timeline of life. But how I've known to understand and how you've shown it in this very kind of easy to understand graph is that it obviously doesn't work like that. So how I was shown to understand it last night, because I myself have been experiencing what has felt like a lot of the ups and downs, and I've been like, one of the intentions I've decided to set for myself on a daily basis was I'd like to align with my highest frequency timeline so that I can do the greatest good for myself and all that is involved. So that is like an intention I like to set for myself, right? But when I was like, okay, guys, because I felt really frustrated, I was like, why am I not feeling aligned with my highest frequency? I'm intentionally trying to connect to that, but I feel like I'm getting pulled down into old frequencies, old paradigms, old issues, old triggers. And it's like, no, like I crawl back out of that. And I'm like, I don't want to be there anymore. And I said, Lisa, it doesn't work that way. And so how they showed me is that as we ascend, okay, as individuals and as a collective, we are ascending in frequency as well. So to move into our highest frequency timeline or our highest frequency self, we're going to go through old paradigms and old experiences to close chapters, to finish off maybe old karmas or energies that are still being held up in these frequencies. It's almost like there's just a little bit of gunk that's left over from this old belief system or this experience that I chose to have, but it's not to come with me in my highest frequency timeline, if that makes sense. It's like dropping baggage off along the way. Okay, so I'll say that. But like it's not linear, when I'm moving through timelines and I'm working towards my highest frequency timeline, there's some things that can't come with me. And so I am to experience it, be confronted by it, be triggered by it. When doing that in a frequency or in a timeline that isn't in the highest frequency. And so everything surrounding me in that experience is of a lower frequency within that timeline. So that's why I can be triggered or I can have angry frustration comments. And I'm like hanging out in this frequency that's a lower vibration because it is in a lower frequency timeline. Okay. So, how they gave the visual to me was like hair blowing in the wind, and each strand of hair is a timeline. Okay. So, that's how like thin and like that the timelines can be and how not linear it is. And highest frequency timeline, let's just say, is at the top here, doesn't always line up at the very top. It blows, it shifts, it moves. So as you're going through and you're experiencing right now, that's how they showed it to me right now, is like hair blowing in the wind. And so we are jumping, we are flowing, we are moving up and down this kind of frequency where, let's say, here is our highest frequency ability to reside. Sometimes that timeline is going to shift and move while others is up here. And I know that's very abstract, but that is why it can feel like at any given moment, we can either feel outside of ourselves, ungrounded, or like we continue to be faced with old paradigms, old decisions, and old vibrations. And then other times completely enlightened and motivated and activated, because they're saying it is not linear right now. And to ascend as a collective, we're constantly having to move and shift to be able to put these old things to rest in order for us to ascend into our highest frequency timeline. Did that make sense?
I love it.
Okay.
I think it's a beautiful description because it is moving. And to that same description, it is very windy right now.
Yes.
Wind is crazy in the world. So like, it's not a gentle breeze of like the supermodels and the fans that are like, yeah, it's like hurricane force winds of change and timelines in the world. So I love that description. I think that's really applicable. It's really beautiful.
And I thank my guides for giving me that narrative, because it was a very strong message, and it was to be shared today. So
that makes sense. For sure. How are you finding the timelines, Elyse?
Well, same. It's like Tornado Alley over here. So as you were talking, Lisa, so I've noticed in the last little bit, I've been having these understandings that like my brain is like, wait, what? Like I'm like, I've been sending Ginette every once in a while these GIFs of like, or GIFs, whatever you say, of like A Beautiful Mind, where there's like all of the like things emerging, and I'm like, whoa, what is that? Like there's these things where I'm like, I feel like I try and explain it and I can't get it out, or it doesn't make sense. So I was getting another one of those. So I've had a lot of understandings about, I don't want to use the word duality because that implies opposites, but it's like I've been getting these understandings about aspects of humanity and kind of the two sides of the same coin. So in this situation, the understandings that I was just getting was that everything that you're saying, Lisa, totally agree. And I completely align with what you were saying. And like when Ginette said, it's very windy right now. So I am a person, like in life, I don't love wind. I find it very confronting, and it's like a frustrating weather experience for me. I don't love it. But I was thinking of the situation of like, think of, people who, let's say you spend all this time on your hair and it's like just the way you like it. And you're like, oh shit, I look good today. And then you go out in the world and the weather is like, and just like makes your hair go crazy, right? And it's frustrating because you're like, I did this, I styled it. Why is it the day that I make myself look cute, I go out into the world and Mother Nature, needs to blow it all over the place? Mm-hmm. The relation that I'm making to that is the idea that this is a two-level learning experience for people. So not only are we in the wind and all of those timelines are kind of being thrown around and we're having to bounce back and forth. And as Lisa, you were talking about, there is this understand, like we're having to go back into old traumas, go back into old things that maybe aren't healed fully, or that we need a different perspective on, or whatever. And so we're kind of bouncing back and forth, up and down, in between those timelines, in between those triggers, traumas, learnings, whatever. But there's also, if we zoom out, this larger lesson about control and our need as a humanity for certainty, and our need for, I did my damn hair today, I'm out, I look good, and now it's getting all messed up. What the hell? Like, why is this, what's happening? Why am I experiencing that? And so, I think you can look at the timeline thing as the same way, is that, maybe, as Ginette was saying, we're kind of going along on a timeline. And then before it was like, oh, maybe a little detour. And then maybe we pop back down, or maybe we kind of get used to being on there. We're so used to that, whether you're an energetic person or tuned in, whether you're just a human that has a plan for your life, and wrenches are get thrown into it every now and again, but that's happening like multiple times a day. And so we are a people that crave that certainty, that crave that understanding, especially in the more developed world, right? We're so used to the luxuries of being able to craft our days and our lives to exactly the way that we want it to be, that then now we're in this situation, whether you look at it from energetics or whether you look at it from COVID and all of climate change and all the things that are happening in the world, we have been shown that as much as we thought we had certainty around plans and life and what we were going to do, that does not exist, like, period.
Mhm.
It just doesn't exist. So we're also having to learn from this bigger perspective. And I think that in and of itself shifts your consciousness, because when you can start to disconnect from, and I'm like, I'm preaching to myself here because I'm like, I just wrote down yesterday that this is happening. What's going on? But this idea that, and I think, I wonder if the spiritual community, people who were conscious, kind of got used to, well, I'm tuned in. I'm tuned into timelines. I'm tuned into what might be happening. Now I don't feel like I have even that level of control. I don't have the ability. I think I had not argument, but I was kind of giving spirit a what for the other day, because I was like, this is just too hard. Like, we're just getting tired, and it's a lot. So all to say, the understanding that I'm getting is it's like all of these learnings and shifts are happening on like multiple levels. And so we're experiencing the lessons and the learnings and the healings through that back and forth timeline experience, but we're also learning it from a zoomed out perspective of, we have to let go of certainty. We have to let go of the desire to know that everything is going to happen A, B, C, D, and off we go. It's not like that. It never was like that. But because things were kind of going on a specific trajectory up until, the last year or two, that felt like it was real, but it's actually not.
So I have a question then. Do you think, in your perspective, this is totally just like conversation starter, do you feel like because of people's uncertainty, and like certainty is one of like humans' biggest needs, for certainty, right? Do you think because of all the uncertainty that people have experienced in the last little while, that has contributed to the like full body in the whirlpool that we were talking about, where it's like, that's why it's been easier for people to kind of get pulled in, because they don't know, there's no certainty, so they look outside of themselves to the collective for what is going on. And then when you go outside of yourself and look at the collective right now for what's going on, you're probably going to find, the
Chaos.
the whirlpool of shit, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, like when we were talking about last week, if people haven't seen it, go back and watch last week's Spirit Coffee Talk about like dipping your toe in, or like being able to just look in so that you can see what's going on, but not getting pulled in. And I think it's almost like this vulnerability, or like this feeling of like lack of control that has pulled people in. So like, although we don't have this certainty, right? We don't have it is asking the collective. Spirit is saying surrender to the wind, because it can be more of it. Like if you're understanding the wind, if you're understanding the fluidity of it right now and surrendering to that, it's not such a harsh reality, number one. And number two, then you do have more of an ability to create your own reality for real. Like we can create how our existence and our reality is within the world of COVID right now, right? Like we do have a lot of control over our own reality right now. I know there's a lot of things that are out of our control, and there's a lot of pain, and I know, I'm not trying to sound insensitive by, oh well, we create our own reality. That's not what I'm saying. I know that can be insensitive, but what I am saying is that that lack of control is what can bring us that helplessness that can often bring forward more of the anxiety, more of the energy. That harder energy can pull you down easier when we give up that sense of our own ability to have control of what we can control.
And I love that too, because you know what I found I really noticed for myself this week with all of the turmoil and the hair windiness too, is I noticed that I then, because I used to really like the control factor. I used to really like being able to tune in and know what's going on and be like, Spirit said this, therefore it is, period. Not, it's going to like morph and change, like that's what they said. And so that's been something I've had to really work on, is surrendering to whichever timeline we're in, to how that's going to unfold, making the choices that I can make in the situations that show themselves. And when we were talking about the wind, and Elyse, you said, but like, what if I did my hair? And I was like, yes. And you know what I realized is when we can accept those two paradigms of like, I can't control exactly which timeline it is, but I can determine which one I like best and do my hair that way. And I can't control the wind outside to ruin my hair, but what I can do is set my best intention with my curls and then take my scarf or my babushka or whatever and wrap my hair in a stylish wrap, throw on my sunglasses, and go outside in the wind and do my best efforts with what I can do with myself, grounding, going out for a little bit. Yes, it's going to be windy, but I'm preparing myself as best as I can for the situation to not ruin the timeline that I prefer most, right? So you're helping to set the intention of the timeline that you feel aligns with you to try and hold on to it the best while it's windy so that you don't get sucked into that whirlpool and have to like claw your way out. Yes, your hair might be a little flat when you take it off, but you can kind of ruffle it up a little bit, bring it back to life, and you're not like a rat's nest of windblown hair.
And to take that this windblown hair analogy even further, because I love a good analogy, let's say you do that best intention and you go outside and like that wind scarf blows away and you're like, okay, well, it is what it is. When you go outside and your hair is blowing all over the place and it's windy, does it feel better to just keep fighting it and trying to like hold it down and fighting after it and like, no, tuck it behind your ears and everything's fine and fight against the wind? Or physically, emotionally, spiritually, does it feel okay to just be like, well, it's windy today. Yes, my hair is going all over the place, and just letting it be. Have a hair elastic in your pocket so you can throw it up if you need to. Like surrendering into from that, it's kind of zooming out into that higher perspective of like, even in my best laid plans, my headscarf might fly away. So if I find myself in that situation of the wind is blowing everywhere and my hair is getting messed up, do I want to fight it? Do I want to fight something that isn't going to stop just for me? Or do I want to, you know what, my hair is going to be a mess today. Everybody else's hair is a mess too, because they're also in the wind. So like, I guess we'll just go with it. And just like surrendering into it. It's that idea of like not fighting it, but just like, okay, here we are.
One step further, it's like surrender, but maybe try to embrace it. Be like, you know, like windblown hair, you know, like you can always too. And it's almost like that can set the stage for so much more. So like if you see somebody come in from outside after having like windblown hair and they're like, oh my God, like it's the worst day of my hair. Or they come and be like, woo, quite the storm out there. Like, wow, you know, like it's literally the same thing, same but different, right? Like how it's embraced is going to then pave the road for the way everything else that you walk forward into, right? My mom and I have this thing that we're like, we try to like hold each other accountable to things, and it's just like a simple statement, and I know it's so like simple, but we just always say, well, that's just another example. Try not to take life too seriously. Just try not to take life too seriously. Things can come and be like, okay, I'm not going to take life too seriously, you know? Just, and like, it's like the little words in the back of my head where something will come up and I'll be like, oh, I'm not going to take life too seriously right now. I'm just not going to, right?
Yeah.
I don't want to get dragged down. And then I feel like that sets the tone for the rest of the day. Right?
Totally. Totally agree. And you know, it's funny because as we're talking here, I just felt like pulling some cards, and one that keeps popping out over and over and over is just, again, for people to really recognize, it's this Radical Expansion card from this Lemurian deck, Radical Expansion card, is to remember that like the times that we're in right now, as much as we're like, yeah, it's overwhelming, well, so is life and whatever, like these are radically changing, radically expanding times on the planet. This expansion hasn't happened in a long time, and the rate in which we're expanding, and I know we've said this, but it's worth saying again, we are compressing what Spirit said is about 100 years worth of growth and expansion into 4 years. Those 4 years started in 2020, so we have a couple more years to go of 100 years worth of evolutionary expansion. And if you look back at the last 100 years, think of how far humanity has come in their industry, in their governments, in their ideas, their healing modalities, medicine, both like Eastern and Western. Like technology, communication, information is massive. And we're compressing that kind of conscious awareness and expansion into 4 years, meaning every day consciousness and expansion is changing rapidly. That's a lot
Spirit keeps saying over and over as you're saying that, they say it's like growing pains.
Growing pains,
Like
totally.
go through like an amazing amount of growth spurt, like super, super quick, and they're like my legs are aching legs. Like it's growing pains.
Yeah.
But like
I,
growing at like an incredible rate. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, Elyse.
no, it's okay. I just had a thing and open to like testing how you feel about it. So if it doesn't align with you, let me know. But part of me, I was thinking like, okay, well, like, was this always the plan? Was it always the plan to compress, 100 years of growth into 4 years? Because, like heads up would have been nice, or I don't know, like it's just a lot, right? And a lot of people are really suffering for a million different reasons. And so I was just kind of like pondering that as you guys were talking. And like understanding that I got is that no, it wasn't always the game plan, but part of, and I'm sure there's a ton of, infinite different reasons why we went this route. And those reasons probably changed a million times because timelines. But this idea that, have either of you watched, I can't remember what it's called, the Netflix documentary about like social media. It's like the social experiment or the social.
Yeah.
So basically about how they talked in a really science-based manner about how technology has expanded exponentially to the point that our brains, our bodies, our nervous systems can't evolve fast enough to keep up with it. So when they created like the like button on Facebook, they had no idea that we wouldn't then attach our worth to how many likes we get one day on a post or whatever. And it was this kind of idea of like, ooh, whoopsie dups. Like we did these things because we thought like, oh, this is a neat, fun thing. Technology can do it, without really seeing the bigger picture of, wow, this is all happening so fast and it's expanding so fast. Our nervous systems, our brains, our human selves aren't going to be able to keep up with this in a way that stays balanced. And so now we're in this position that we are, where a lot of us are run by social media, or it impacts depression and mental health and all these things. And so the understanding that I got was like, society went all of a sudden in the last like 20 years on warp speed as far as our technological evolution, that actually ended up taking our consciousness backwards. And so because that happened so fast, the evolution in the other direction has to happen just as fast, if not faster.
Ooh,
because
point.
if our consciousness evolution kept kind of going at like a, we'll just slowly creep up there and we'll get there in 100 years. Yeah. Technology and the, I'll say, negatives that come with that evolution that's happening so fast would have overrun us. Like we wouldn't have been able to come back from it. So now it's like, okay, we're at a breaking point. And I don't mean it in a like do or die necessarily, but just at a point where it's like, this is a critical tipping point of, if you keep going in this trajectory without some sort of really fast conscious evolution, your 3D technological evolution will take you so far down a road that we don't know if we can help you evolve back from that. So I'm curious, thoughts on that?
That's very, very cool.
I like that idea because what I keep getting from my guides over and over, especially throughout the summer, there was a very big change point of bringing us back towards this golden age of balance of science and spirituality, balance of masculine and feminine. And so if we take that scientific through intelligence, through let's really left-brained ways, right? Technology, you're right. With that rapid increase, we need to rapidly increase the other side to bring it back to balance, right? Just like with the amount of masculine patriarchy domination in the world that it has been, there has to be a rapid expansion of the feminine balance, which we're seeing even in governments now. We're seeing it in lots of different things. I really resonate with what you're saying with that, as part of the reason why it had to be so fast, because I don't agree, or I don't think that they had it in their plan, in plan A, B, or C, to make it happen this fast. I think they were hoping, especially in the, like from 2010, maybe even the year 2000, but at least 2010, I think they were hoping people would naturally as a collective evolve faster than they did. But when they weren't, maybe around 2015, 2016, they're saying is when they had to really start being like, we're going to turn up the volume here a little bit. No, they're still not getting it. Okay, we're going to have to push a red button. right? Like an ignition of sorts. And I think that ignition was really December 20th. No, yeah, December 20th, 2021. December, no. Oh my God, last year.
2020.
2020.
Yeah. Yeah.
12, 20,
That makes sense.
2020.
Yeah.
And they keep saying that, I think we talked about this before, is that bringing in the balance is always going to continue. So like any kind of the polarity that we've always talked about too is where there was like a more of like a negative, like a darker form where people were like had fear around, you know, either the virus or the vax or whatever it might be. Spirit kept coming in and saying like, we're not going to ever let the dark take over. So like spirit isn't separate from science. Spirit isn't separate from, you know, masculine and feminine. Like spirit is within everything. And so they keep on saying like, yes, it had to evolve faster. Yes, but spirit comes in to create balance. So they keep saying like, we come in to help evolve technology. Technology isn't all negative, and so consciousness is just like spirits, like we will come in to incorporate within the rise of technology, within the rise of consciousness, within the rise of science, within the rise of like human health, like whatever it is. It's like we won't let darkness take over. It's never going to happen.
And I love that because as you're talking, the three guides came in, three guides of light, and they said, she's talking of transcendence. They're like, this is transcendence. I'm like, yes. I'm like, I know that word, but like, let me see the definition. So I was just looking it up, and it's existence or experience beyond the normal or physical level, the possibility of spiritual transcendence in the modern world. And as you were saying what you were saying, it was like spirit having these override, the energetics of the spirit world or the higher consciousness having these overrides to the technologies in place. So meaning like technologies, or let's just use technologies, would be receptive to frequency, right? These technologies would have an override based on frequency. And if we learn as humanity the value of our frequency, we can then have an effect energetically on these technologies to harmonize them so that they don't run off in a left brain tangent, but they actually get balanced by energy. This is transcendence, is what they're talking about. It's very cool. Very, very cool.
And that is amazing stuff today, ladies.
Yeah, I know. And I think I just wanted to say too, I feel like we're also, like Lisa, what you were talking about, that balance of science, spirit, and spirituality, we're starting to see that happen outwardly more. So like look at the CIA now unclassified documents of the gateway process, I think it's called, where like they scientifically proved through the CIA research, you know, super smart people, from a scientific perspective, that multiple timelines exist. They have proved and confirmed that our consciousness can be transcended out of our body and living in multiple timelines as we are now. They proved that we can communicate telepathically. They proved that manifestation, calling things in via energetics, is real. That's out there now. And when you think about, you know,
it's been around forever.
Exactly. But it was always kind of like either off to the side or woo-woo.
Totally. Quantum physics has been around, and like we have just densified our perspective from a very linear, like third dimensional perspective, when there was kind of the dip in the paradigm, the dip in the consciousness. But you go back into the like golden years, like golden ages, you go back into ancient worlds, you know, this was everyday understanding.
And even those
allowing ourselves to raise in consciousness to understand it again.
Yeah. And even when you look at some of the disclosures around aliens, like for the longest time, or beings, or whatever you want to call them, people were like, oh no, that's, and it's, you know, shown now that the powers that be were like, nope, that's not real. It's not real. It's not real. Yet we were, and society believed, no, it's not real. It's not real. And people who had those experiences were maybe told to believe that they were, you know, out to lunch, or that they had all these problems, or they were making it up, or whatever. And now it's like, no, it's very real. And when you look at a lot of when scientists talk about beings and their spaceships and all these things, it's not like they don't have technology. Like they have technology so far advanced that we don't have it on this planet. You know, there's that Netflix documentary that has all those unclassified information or declassified information, and they talk about how like ships that they've seen and that they've researched have propulsion capabilities that we do not have on this planet. They're made up of materials that we do not know of on this planet. They know that they can maneuver ships via their thought process. We didn't believe that to be true. So it's like, again, it's that balance of energetics, spirituality, and science, and they can coexist. But, and I know we've talked about this on here before, but it's just, there's that duality right now, or that paradigm that we're just so on opposite ends of things.
Yeah,
when it's like,
but as we're ascending, we're starting to understand and accept this on, again, a way faster trajectory than ever before.
Mm-hmm.
Like if we even would have talked about half of this stuff 5 years ago, people would have been like, these women are crazy. I mean, people might still think that, but I think significantly less.
Yeah.
And I might be naive to that, but I really like, I'm like, even conversations that I'm having on a regular basis with people about this kind of stuff, it's way more understood. And that goes along with this trajectory of like rays of consciousness and the frequency and awareness. And of course, not everybody is going to ascend at the same time and at the same frequency. It wouldn't make sense. It would knock Earth off its axis. It's just not going to happen. It has to stay balanced, right? But on a balanced state, it is increasing very quickly. And that's why it feels like you're blowing in the wind, right?
Yeah.
Bringing it all back around.
That was good. That was skill right there.
Good
one.
Well, that was something.
Yeah, I think that's really quite lovely. It's very timely. It's timely with what's in the energetics to talk about too. And I say this because I had been chatting with my guides about what to talk about on my podcast, and some of these ideas were similar. And so what that tells me is it's the timing for people to hear it. It's the time where people, like you're saying, Lisa, people are ready to hear it. They have enough of a platform, enough of an open-mindedness to even ponder it, right? Like you said, 5 years ago, there wouldn't have been even a platform for pondering. So this is exciting stuff to me. And this is what Spirit was saying, was that throughout the fall and through September would be a lot of like shifting in place so that October can be moving forward. There would be movement, like forward momentum. And I really think that's what we're leading up to right now. The more people that hear things like this, ponder things like this, or like things, the more we're going to move in a direction with more stability and maybe a little less flipping of timelines, perhaps, right? Like I just really think we're hitting quite a juncture point right now in this fall to help dictate where the fall goes.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
Fantastic.
If any of this resonates with anybody that's watching or has a question, like if you're really intrigued about this, but this is the first time that you've heard a lot of these terms, please ask anything in the comment section below, or come jump on our Facebook page at Avalon Spirit on Facebook or avalonspirit.com and ask the questions. Get this conversation going. Let's generate more understanding and more conversation. No, you're not alone. If these experiences have been happening to you and you don't really know who to talk to about it, like, let's come together and continue this conversation. So.
Yeah. And on commenting or whatever, if you have questions that we want to, like, that you want us to expand upon in videos, we're happy to do that. We can incorporate that, because I think the more that we can, like, as you were saying, Lisa, the more that we can continue this conversation and just like plant seeds. It's not that, you have to listen to a video and then be like, oh, I have everything figured out. I mean, nobody does. But the more you can start to kind of plant those seeds and cultivate it and have conversations, the more these ideas and understandings will take root in whatever way they're meant to for you, because it's not going to be the same for everyone. It's not supposed to be the same for everyone.
And we're not all in the same timeline.
Exactly. Yeah.
We're not all experiencing it at the same time.
Totally.
So it gives you a little bit more space to be able to figure this unfigure-outable time.
I love it. I love it. So I mean, I think with that we can leave it for people to ponder. Please do subscribe and share, you guys. This is a really beautiful topic for people to hear right now, especially leading up to October. So if there's anyone to share it with, it would definitely be worthwhile now, because the more conscious we are in our understandings of how much we are co-creators and the perspective we have, the more we create the reality we want. It is really that simple at the real base roots of it. So the more that you know, the more you can choose. The more you can choose, the more you create what you want. It is yours. So with that, I think we will leave you guys for this week, and check back next week and see what is up. So thank you guys all so much for joining us.